Everybody, Manny here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NBA and the NFL. Got a brand new video for you guys today. We got a 4-game slate in the association. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today because of the small slate. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to see a little bit about how I go about putting a player pool together. Especially because it's a small slate like this, I could be able to cover that a little bit in this video today. But before I go into the video, I appreciate you guys drop a like always, man. I greatly appreciate it. It does help my channel. And if you're new to the channel, it's the first time here, and you want to be able to get your lineup advice videos on a consistent basis for your NBA slates as well as your NFL, then definitely you must. The only thing you have to do is subscribe down below to become part of the DFS Zone community. That's basically it. Subscribe down below, put on your post notifications, that little bell icon, turn it on. This way you don't miss out on any of my NBA or NFL lineup advice videos. All right, so today, Sunday, November the 4th, 2018, 4-game slate on Fanduel. I would cover the 6-game slate, main slate on DK, but the players are pretty much good for both sites for today. Going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to basically break down. Usually when I have 3 or 4 game slates, I will not cover 1-game and 2-game slates throughout the NBA season, but anything 3 or above, I will. This happens to be a 4-game main slate, and I figured today, because it's Sunday, I do have a little bit of time before football starts, that I'm going to basically break down and give you guys, especially my new DFS NBA players that are coming in new to the channel over the last couple of weeks and have subscribed, which I greatly appreciate you guys subscribing and being a part of the community. But also for those who might see this video today, it's more of a kind of like showing you a little bit of a couple of steps. And it's not everything that I normally do, but it gives you at least an idea of more or less what I go through and what I actually do to build my player pool, and then put those player pools in within my Fantasy Cruncher software and basically crunch it down and get an idea of more or less what kind of lineups I can build around those particular players. So let's go right into it. So I'm going to go game by game. So we have Orlando and San Antonio. I'm going to look at, now what I normally do is I look to see if there's anything favorable out of this matchup. Nobody here else, just really pops out at me. DJ Augustin, Jaren Grant, and then you got Mr. Forbes. You say to yourself, are you interested in any one of these guys? If I'm interested in anybody here, it'll probably be because of the matchup. That'll probably be more than likely maybe a little DJ Augustin at 4,100. You need about 20, 21 to cover that, and he's at averaging 19. So I will probably put him first on my player pool, as far as someone to consider. And then what I'll do is I'll do some extensive research on fantasy points, the two teams playing against each other, where they stand as far as points per game, so on, so on and so forth. I go through a number of different steps. I normally use a couple of different websites, but I'm going to just crunch it down and just try to give you an idea of more or less how I start at least getting an idea of who I want per game. So first things first, this game has an implied total of 207.4 with obviously San Antonio favored at home. So again, out of this matchup here, as far as point guard, we're going to say DJ Augustin will probably be someone I'll put in the player pool to at least look at him a little further. I go to shooting guard. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan stands out right away. So DeMar DeRozan at 9,900, really big number. He's averaging 46, as you can see here thus far this year, and he's at 9,009. So you pretty much need 49 to meet value. I think he could definitely cover that. Then you got Evan Fournier. He's at 5,800, averaging about 26 fantasy points per game. At 5,800, you need pretty much 27, 28 fantasy points from him. This is a little bit above his average. We will look into it, so I will probably throw him in the player pool as well. Down here, maybe for value, maybe Terrence Ross. I would probably like maybe Marco Bellinelli a little bit more, because he is $500 cheaper, and he's about only 3 fantasy points below, but I believe Bellinelli has a little bit more upside. He is playing more I think he's playing more minutes, as you can see here, 23 to 27 over the last 3 games, and he's been able to get in the mid-20s, which would definitely meet value and exceed value. And he's done it several times, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times over the last maybe 6, 7 games. So Marco might be someone I might throw in as a low value play. We go to small forward. Rudy Gay and them, they played last night. I had him as one of my stud players yesterday, and he was not that good at all. Then again, the game was a little ugly at times. I didn't catch the game. I was out at a family event, but Rudy Gay definitely let me down last night. So he may have a bounce back game. We got to look at it like, hey, we got to shake off what happened last night. Is Rudy Gay someone that we might consider today? Possibly, because of whom he's playing against. We have Isaac and Simmons, both game time decisions. Isaac, the last time I put him in play, he let me down as well. So a bounce back game here. I think Dante Cunningham is a solid budget play here. Just looking at him already in this matchup with Isaac and Simmons and Awandu. I kind of like Cunningham here. He's getting more than enough minutes at 3,600. You only need 15, 16, and he's averaging more than 26 minutes per game over the last 4 games, and he threw up a 34 spot, which I gave you him last night as a budget play, and he came through for us. So Dante Cunningham may be someone to consider again today. At small forward, at power forward in this matchup, definitely Ulrich stands out at 8,100. You only need 40 to meet value, and that's about where he's at as far as fantasy points per game. Aaron Gordon had a bad, tough game the other night, but then again, the game got a little out of hand. I know that the game was a little bit of a blowout. He only played 23 minutes and only put up 9.6 fantasy points. He is due for a bounce-back game. We will look at him a little bit further. So right now, I would definitely throw in there, at least for me, I would throw in there Ulrich and Gordon as to players to look into a little bit further. And at center, definitely here, Vukovic. We know Vukovic is not going to see Gasol. He's going to probably be defended by Ulrich. More than likely, Ulrich has been playing mostly center in this San Antonio team. So, but Vuk is definitely a viable play. I would definitely go with Vukovic there. When we go now to the other game, Memphis and Phoenix. So bottom line is, let me just go through the games first, because I pretty much put everybody already that I have an interest in as a player pool. I already have them in the cruncher. So I want to be able to get through all the plays first. The next thing I would do is go, like I said, I'll go game by game. Then I will look at the implied totals of this game. This game is 209.5 with Memphis favored by 3. They have Memphis favored by 3, which is, I think, is about right. We come to the ball to the point guards here. Definitely Mike Conley comes out and definitely is someone that I will put in my player pool right away. The matchup against Okobo and Cannon, I think, is favorable for him. Obviously, he's a 7,000. He's a little pricey. At 7,008, you need about 38, and he's averaging 37. So he's right around where he needs to be. I would prefer him to be obviously below his fantasy point average, but he definitely has upside. So we're gonna look at Connolly a little bit more. Then we go to shooting guard. Definitely Booker stands out. Temple, we have to throw Temple in there because he's playing well. So I will probably have both of them in the player pool and then basically look at them a little bit more. Booker is at 7,900, Temple at 4,400. You need only about 21, 22 for Temple. He's averaging 23, so that number looks pretty good at 4,400. Booker is averaging 39 fantasy points per game, and he's at about 39 for that price of 7,900. So he's priced about right, and we know he is possibly closer to a more 9K player. So I definitely think Devin Booker is viable here in this matchup. Small forward, I would go definitely Warren. I know he had a little bit of back spasms yesterday or something like that. He may be ready to play today. I probably won't be on him when you hear back spasms. I've had those before. Those are no joke. I would think down here, Trevor Ariza's been playing really well for Phoenix. So if Warren doesn't go, that opens up the door for Ariza. And even if Warren does play, Ariza has been starting as well. So I think they've been utilizing it as the 3 and 4. They're utilizing these guys as 3s and 4s. Kyle Anderson is a pretty decent defender, so I wouldn't be on him as far as offensively in this game, but someone to consider here as far as, hey, can he defend and neutralize Warren or Ariza? That might be one of the reasons why we might not go with Ariza or Warren. But I like the whole idea of Ariza here. 5,000, you only need 25. He's averaging 22.5, and he's playing more than enough minutes. I know that for certain. He's playing massive minutes, 28 minutes or better, as high as 34 minutes. So he'll be someone to consider. Power forward, I have no interest in anybody here in power forward, to be totally honest with you, in this matchup. So I am not even touching that. Then over here, definitely Gasol and Ayton are definitely in play. I would probably prefer Gasol better. He's a better defender. And when we look at the numbers as far as fantasy point totals among the teams, I think I'm going to see that obviously Gasol is probably a better defender than Ayton, and he's usually has done well against all kind of big men. So we'll look at that a little bit further. But both of these guys are in play, and that's basically it in that game. Now comes the 2 highest implied total games of the night, and these games are the ones you may want to target for your more favorite position players that are in favorable positions as far as matchup is concerned. This game here, implied totals, Minnesota and Portland, 231. It's the second highest of the night. Obviously, the Toronto-LA game is going to be a great one, 237 implied total for that one. But Minnesota-Portland, at point guard, obviously, D. Lil is in play at 9,700 and E47. He's a 50-point and upside player. He's averaging 45 right now, as you can see here on FanDuel. Definitely like the whole idea of him going up. Teague is a good defender, probably a better defender than Rose and Jones, but he right now still is out. And if he is out still, then you could look for some value with Derrick Rose, who has that little ankle tweak. If Derrick Rose doesn't play, then definitely you want to have a little bit of Tyus Jones at 4,800 and getting massive minutes. So I like that. I like the whole idea of that. We go to shooting guard. Jimmy Butler, hopefully he doesn't rest. If he doesn't rest in this game, Jimmy Butler is definitely the best play here over C.J. McCollum, even though C.J. McCollum is cheap. C.J. McCollum is cheap, but Jimmy Butler is one of the better defenders in the league. So for me personally, I would definitely be all over Jimmy Butler, not on C.J. Now, Jimmy Butler is out, and Josh Okogie is going to be playing. I'll probably consider a little bit of Okogie at 5,600 in this matchup. But I would probably more lean towards CJ. CJ finally had a good game yesterday. He sure did. Yesterday he put 35 minutes up, solid game, 30 points from the floor. We know that he's a scorer. He is not big on anything else. He's not the greatest defender as well. But Jimmy Butler is the person that I really want here. I'm not interested in anybody else down here at small forward. Wiggins definitely in play, and definitely more so on my player pool favorite list if there is no Jimmy B. If Jimmy Butler decides he wants to rest, and this is the game that he should play against Portland, because I know they're playing again tomorrow, but I don't think they're playing. I forgot who they're playing tomorrow. I think the Clippers. I think this is the game that will be more important for Minnesota to win, and he already has rested a day or two. So I think Wiggins definitely still a viable play here at 6,600. Not interested in anybody else. Totally honest with you. Power forward, I will put in a player pool. I will probably put in a player pool both of these guys, Aminu and Taj Gibson. I think are both viable. This is a nice little balance. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I would not be at all opposed to putting both of these guys as the two power forwards in one of my lineups today at 5,100 and 4,900. They're both around the same range. I think they're both playing about the same amount of minutes. 32 and 33 for Aminu. He put up a big game last night. I had him in my late night lineup, and he did fantastic. Taj Gibson has been pretty steady for those cash game players out there. I mean, this is a guy that you could probably utilize as cash today. I mean, he's pretty consistent, averaging 24 fantasy points per game, and he has a little bit of upside. He can get you about a 6 or 7 more fantasy point upside, because he can get you up to about 32, as he did right here against Indiana. So he is someone viable who can get you the fantasy point. And you could also consider in that pool maybe Mr. Collins at center. I'm not a big fan of Nurkic. You know, he gets into foul trouble a lot. He's been playing fairly well. I think that's a nice price for him, 7,100. So I'm not going to tell you guys not to play him, because we know Karl Anthony Towns is not a great defender. But Karl Anthony Towns is the more talented center, and he is starting to get cooking now. 63 and 62 in the last game. Last two games, 2 out of the last 3 games. Last game, pretty much put almost 1 fantasy point per minute. He's pretty much good for that. And as you can see, he's starting to defend, get some blocks and steals. That's where he is good. And he's also can shoot from the floor, from 3, could drive, could work himself under the basket, and at the same time is not a bad free throw shooter. So he brings a little bit of everything to the table. So Towns would be on that player pool. We go over to the big game. This game here I have a lot of exposure to the last 2, Minnesota and Portland, and Toronto, LA, just simply because obviously there's the games with the highest implied totals, which you should be definitely targeting in any matchup that you decide to play in on DFS. If that even includes baseball, WNBA, basketball, with the NBA, and of course the NFL. Up here at point guard in this game, Lowry's in play, Ball is in play. Rondo's in play. Like Rondo more than Ball for $400 cheaper. Rondo had a great game last night. Kyle Lowry's pretty good. I also like Fred VanVleet. He's very, very consistent. Can get you 20 to 25 almost every single time he's on the floor. So he's definitely a good, viable cash play for you cash play players. Shooting guard in the player pool. Definitely got to put in Danny Green. He's having a great year. He's also a pretty good defender. Hart is pretty cheap at $4,100, so you got to at least throw him in the player pool. Take a stab at him. I'm not on KCP. Go to small forward. Obviously, James and Leonard are both in the hunt here. Definitely would prefer Leonard here for nearly $1,900 cheaper. if he plays. He has a tweaked ankle, so we'll see. We got to definitely keep an eye on that all the way through until game time. So Kawhi Leonard hopefully will play in this matchup. If not, then you definitely could consider LeBron James. But then again, without Leonard, Toronto is going to be really in a tough spot. And then I'm not interested in anybody else down here. Maybe possibly Lance Stevenson, because he is capable of getting you 25, 30 really quickly in a short period of time. So Stevenson may be someone. He's definitely someone that I'm going to put in the player pool. Power forward, Ingram, Kuzma, Ibaka, and Siakam are all in the player pool at the moment. Now it's a matter of who am I going to play with. Now I definitely could tell you right now, I will have at least one Laker and one Toronto Raptor in a lineup today, just simply to balance it out, because all four of these guys are pretty much in that same range. As you can see, Ibaka is doing very well. For $6,500, he's $400 cheaper than Ingram, and he's averaging about 31.5, almost 32 fantasy points per game. Siakam is right there at 26. Every one of these guys are playing very, very well for their teams right now, and they're very, very important. Now, what I like is Ibaka and Siakam bring more of that defensive mentality to the actual game in that position. Ibaka could score, but he also goes out there, he defends, he gets blocks, he gets steals. So does Siakam. Whereas Ingram and Kuzma do get blocks and steals here and there, but not as consistent or as often as these Toronto guys. At center, McGee as well as Valanciunas, they're both in play, hands down. But Valanciunas being $1,600 cheaper, as I look at it right now, $7,700 and $6,100, I will be more in tune and more looking and gearing myself out to probably play Valanciunas a little bit more. Just simply to save the $1,600, because I know he can get me 28, maybe even 30, and even as high as 40. He's at 28 a game, and at 61, you pretty much need 30. So I could see him getting 35, 40 in this matchup, because I believe the Lakers have had issues with centers as far as fantasy points, which we're going to look into right now. So that's pretty much the player pool right now, right? So now we go over here, and I'm going to show you. We're going to check off. We're going to check off all the guys we considered, right? We said we'll be interested. Hold on, let me just change this. Filter it to the 4-game main slate. We're doing this all right in front of you guys. I said Lowry was in play. Lillard, Connolly, Rose if he plays, Rondo, Tyrese Jones, Van Fleet, DJ Augustin, and that's about it. We could probably throw in there Cannon as well, because he's at 3,900. He can get you 20 or better. A shooting guard, we'll clear this up. None. DeRozan in play. Butler, Booker, McCollum, Fournier, Green, Temple. Did I go over Garrett Temple? Josh Hart, Bellinelli, and I tried Stauskas last night. He was just terrible. So I'm not going back to him. Small forward, clear this up. I know the video is a little lengthy, guys, but trust me, I mean, this is good stuff just to give you guys a little bit more or less what I go through. I mean, what I normally go through is a lot more than this, but this is just a little quick abbreviated. Obviously, James, Kawhi in play. Not high in Rudy Gay today, but, I'll put him in there in the pool. Wiggins I definitely like. I like Ariza. I like Stevenson. Dante Cunningham definitely as a value play. He is fantastic as a budget play today. Maybe even CJ Miles. That's about it. Power forward. Clear that up. Aldridge is in play. Gordon is in play. Ingram, Kuzma, Ibaka, Siakam, Aminu, Taj Gibson, Zach Collins. And that's about it. At center, very simple. Towns, Vukovic, Gasol, Eaton, McGee, and Valanciunas. So it's a lot of the centers, but we're going to narrow this down. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to go back to the games, and I already looked up fantasy point totals and so on and so forth prior to coming out here. So when we come here to the Lillard, we're going to start with Orlando, right? The Orlando game. If I'm going to go anywhere here, Orlando's giving up 30.7 fantasy points per game to point guards this year. They gave up 60 to Lillard, 44 to Kyrie Irving, 35 to Kemba Walker, and 36 to Dragic are the most appealing guards that they have faced. And they're going to go up against the San Antonio guards here, again, I'm not interested, even though it's Forbes. He is pretty good for 20, 21, 22, but that's about it. Definitely a good cash play at 4,000. You only need 20. So if you want to go that route for cash and save yourself some money, and a guy that can give you just a little bit more upside, giving you 20, 25, he may be the one. I will probably go with DJ Augustin. San Antonio against guards, only giving up 29.3 fantasy points per game. So if you wanted to go with Augustin, he's averaging 19. They have given up 42 to Holiday, 32 to Ball, 45 to Lillard, and 38 to Teague. So you could consider him to have the possibilities to get 20 to 22, 23 in this game. I'm not high on him. All right. Shooting guards, not too bad for these teams here at shooting guard. Definitely DeMar DeRozan is in play. I am all over DeMar DeRozan at 4,900, plain and simple. You know, I like him, DeMar DeRozan. You got Evan Fournier. As far as San Antonio giving up to guards, 22.6 fantasy points per game. This guy is averaging about 26. They did give up 44 to Oladipo and just 50 to Jimmy Butler. Those are the only two, and those are elite shooting guards. Against anybody else, they have really pretty much held them down. So I am not high at all on Fournier here, even though anything can happen at 5,800. Definitely love DeMar DeRozan. He is one of the top guys thus far at shooting guard. We go to small forward in this matchup. I told you guys we might have a consideration on Gay or Dante Cunningham for San Antonio. I do not like any of the Orlando players. So Orlando against small forwards have given up 21.8 fantasy points per game, so not a whole lot. Gay is averaging 28. Cunningham is averaging close to 14. They've given up 32 to Tobias Harris, 32 to Middleton, and 33 to Nicholas Batum. That is some pretty good defense. They were all defended by Jonathan Isaac. Very important thing here to consider. Jonathan Isaac was the one who defended all three of these top guys. All of these three top guys were held down by Mr. Isaac. And right now, he's a game-time decision. You know, so if he does not play, it definitely opens up the doors for Gay to have a nice bounce-back game, or for Cunningham to come off the bench and have some good quality minutes in a game that if it gets out of hand, he's going to be getting more opportunities. So I think Gay and Cunningham for sure are in play. Okay, just seeing those numbers. At power forward, if we look at Orlando versus power forwards, they've given a 24 fantasy points per game. Aldridge is averaging 40.7, so he's definitely in a favorable matchup here. Considering that Orlando in a favorable matchup, but Mr. Aaron Gordon has held down Giannis to only 30, Gallinari to 22. The only two players that have done well and hit value against Aaron Gordon defending them is Bjelica with 39 and Dario Saric, surprisingly, with 35. So it's tough to gauge here if Aldridge is going to have a tough go with Gordon. When it comes down to the other end of the court in this matchup, we know defensively, Aldridge is more than likely going to defend Vucevic. But coming down on the other end, when Aldridge has the ball, you could definitely consider Aaron Gordon is going to probably be on him. That's what I'm thinking. That's my thought on that. So Gordon is in play at $7,600 for $500 less. I'll be honest with you, I'm leaning more towards Aldridge. When you look at San Antonio versus power forwards, San Antonio is giving up 31.2 fantasy points per game. They did give up 42 to Merritt, 40 to Doncic, and 49 to Kuzma. And Aaron Gordon, and I think I said it the other way around. I mean, Aldridge is in play for me for $500 more. I think he has the better upside. But Gordon is in a favorable matchup here against Aldridge if Aldridge is going to defend him, because these guys were defended by Aldridge. And like I said, Doncic, Kuzma, and Merritt all put up more than 40 fantasy points on Aldridge. So very, very surprising numbers there. So I guess either one of these two will still be in the player pool. But me personally, I'll be with the upside of getting 50 or better from LaMarcus Aldridge. I would be more in favor of him, knowing that Gordon really doesn't quite get to 50 that often. Aldridge has more of the potential to do that. When you look at Aaron Gordon, he hasn't hit 50 yet this year, but he had 44, and then maybe 4 games back he had a 47, and then at the beginning of the year, 44. So he's very choppy, a little bit up and down, where Aldridge, I'm sure probably already hit 50, which he did. He did it in game 1. He did it in the third game of the season, 61. and he got a 44 in the last game just last night. So the only drawback, obviously, he played last night. So he's on the front end of a back-to-back. Could be a little concerned there, while Aaron Gordon played just 2 nights ago. So he's rested 1 full day. I think it's a bounce-back game for Gordon. Can he get 45, 50? I don't know. At this price, 7,600, he really only needs about 37. 38 is still way above his average. He can get there. I just think that the matchup for me, I think I'm more in favor of Aldridge. As center, all hands down Vukovic at 9,000. I'll have a little favoritism to Vuk. I think Vuk will be on some of my lineups. 9,000, you only need 45. He's averaging about 44. I don't see no reason why he cannot get it. All right, let's go to the second game. When it comes to Memphis and Phoenix, we're going to look at Mike Conley. Does he have a good opportunity here? Well, we look at who's going to defend him, Cannon, Okobo. Yeah, I think he has a good shot. Well, let's see how they've done. Okay, Phoenix versus point guards, giving up 37.2 fantasy points per game, one of the largest on the slate in this 4-game slate. So I definitely favor Mike Conley here. He's averaging about 37, and 7,800, you pretty much need 38. So it's right in the wheelhouse. On top of that, Phoenix is giving up 37 on the nose, so they have a tendency of giving up at least 37. They give up 39 to Lowry, 50 to Westbrook, 33 to Ball, 48 to Curry, and 43 to Jamal Murray. And he has already played 1 game against Phoenix in Memphis, and he put up 31 and a half. So a little bit less than what we want him to do today. But again, favorable matchup for Mike Conley. I definitely like him. I think he'll be one of those ones that we definitely want to keep in the player pool. All right. I am not interested in the Phoenix guys over Mike Conley. That's just bottom line. But if you are going to consider anybody, definitely Cannon. We go over the shooting guard, Booker, Temple. Those are the only 2 I'm really looking at. Booker. So we're looking at Memphis. Again, shooting guards, giving up 24.7 fantasy points per game. Booker's coming in, averaging about 39. He's definitely a guy that can get you 50 or better. So he has great upside. 7,900, you pretty much need 39 right on the nose. They only given up 24.7. When I took a little bit further to see whom they have had trouble with and whom they've been able to stop, they gave up 42 to Beal, which is the highest this year, and they only gave up 31 to Buddy Hield. Other than that, they held down, and the defender for all these matchups was Garrett Temple. So Temple is showing that he is pretty good defensively, very quietly this season. He held down Donovan Mitchell to 23, Kent Bazemore to 21, Oladipo to 26. Those are 3 pretty good shooting guards that he has held down. Now he's got to deal with Devin Booker. Tough matchup. Devin Booker at home. That crowd, they really get going over there. He's been a little banged up, and he's coming back. We know he has 50-point upside. He hasn't done that thus far this year, but as you can see, 47 and 40 already, 37, 34, averaging 39. I expect him to get 40 or better here, Garrett Temple or not. But Garrett Temple is able to hold down Devin Booker to under 39 fantasy points. He's got to be someone that we're going to have to start reckoning with as we move further during the course of the season. On the other side of the ball, as far as Phoenix defending against shooting guards, they're giving up only 26 fantasy points per game to shooting guards thus far this year. Pretty close to Memphis with Garrett Temple. They give up 31 to Klay Thompson and 39 to DeMar DeRozan, which is pretty low for DeMar DeRozan, only putting up 39 against them. He was 4 or 5 fantasy points below his average when he put up that 39 against this team. And, those were being held by Devin Booker at the time. So could be an interesting matchup. I think Devin Booker is definitely in play. I think Garrett Temple at 4,400 could be a little sneaky play here with his defense. Could probably get a few steals. Who knows? 4,400. You only need 22 from him. He's averaging 23, so he's slightly below his average, his price. Someone definitely to consider. We come over to small forward, and we look at here Warren, Ariza. Warren is out. Definitely Ariza looks like a more fantastic play here at $400 cheaper, averaging 22.6 fantasy points per game. When we go and look and see how Memphis has done against small forwards, they have given up 27.2 fantasy points per game. Mr. Prince put up 42. Engels has played him twice and has been held by Kyle Anderson, held down Mr. Engels to only 26 and 30, and Otto Porter to 29. So Kyle Anderson is shown, and we knew that going into last year when he was playing with San Antonio, that he is a pretty decent defender. And he's showing that here as well thus far this year, holding down a couple of pretty decent players. Holding down Mr. Engels as well as Otto Porter to less than 29 fantasy points per game is not too bad. The only person who scored anything near some serious points was Mr. Prince with the 42. So Trevor Ariza, we don't want him to go and get 42. We want him to get 30. If he can get 30, give us 6x, maybe 7x, 30 to 35, which he is capable of getting you 30 or better. He's done it already. Did 32, pretty much a 33 spot here, and did 44 in game 1. So what I like is that Ariza is getting minutes. I mean, anytime you got guys that are getting sufficient enough minutes, if he can get more than enough touches, he'll be fine. So Ariza, pretty important piece of the pie here for Phoenix. So I definitely like that matchup. Over here, as I said earlier, I don't like anybody here, so we're not going to bother. Memphis and Phoenix over here, definitely like the two centers. Love Marc Gasol a little bit better because he's a defensive center. And when we look here as far as Phoenix versus centers, Phoenix has given up 43 fantasy points per game, the most on this slate to centers. So definitely I have a lot of Marc Gasol in my lineups today. Marc Gasol is averaging 38.8, nearly 39 fantasy points per game. He did score a 40 spot in the last meeting against these guys. They already have played. And he's been on fire. I gave you guys him twice over the last few games, and he's put a 49 and 51. He's probably going to be one that I'm going to recommend here again today. 41-40. I mean, he's pretty solid when he's hot and he's playing well, and, you know, he is very good everywhere. He does a lot of everything. As you can see, he gets steals. He gets the occasional blocks. He can pass the ball, and he actually rebounds. So he is pretty darn good. Phoenix did give up 39 to Valanciunas, 55 to Noel, 45 to McGee, and 80 to Jokic. So definitely with Mr. Gasol still cheap at $8,300. This is a 9K player, so we got to take advantage of his price tag now before it starts creeping on up. $8,300. I think the last game he was $7,700, $7,800. So he's moved up $400 or $500 to this game. I definitely would like to take a little bit of advantage of that price tag for Mr. Marc Gasol. When you look at Ayton, same situation. He's doing okay as a rook. 8,000, you need 40. And Memphis against centers, man, again, Gasol is pretty darn tough, man. Gobert has faced him twice and only has put up a 34 and a 30. Willie Cauley-Stein only put up a 33. And Ayton, 44. All right. He did up put 44 against these guys before, so he already has had a 40 spot. So, I mean, I think Mr. Gasol is a little bit tougher than Ayton is, and I could see him having the better upside in this matchup. But again, the young kid, he's in play, guys. I mean, either one of these two, you cannot go wrong. I'm more in favor of Marc Gasol just because of his defensive, his defense is a little bit better. Minnesota and Portland, man. D. Lil definitely in play. I mean, I already told you that. When we look at the actual matchup as far as Minnesota versus point guards, 24.8 fantasy points per game. Damian Lillard is coming in here averaging 45 at 9,700. You need 47. They did give up 51 to Curry, 41 to Kyle Lowry. They held down, okay, and these were defended by Jeff Teague. So very important note here. Jeff Teague played against these guys here. Rubio held him down to 17. Eric Bledsoe held him down to 23. Dennis Smith Jr. only got 30. Damian Lillard obviously is at another level than these guys. But Jeff Teague has shown that he was a pretty good defender. But then, again, Jeff Teague is still right now remaining out. So if you have D. Rose or Tyrus Jones, I mean, man, I love the matchup even more so, right? So this is why we look at those fantasy points, and we also look back to see who defended them. And Jeff Teague has shown that he can definitely shut down some players. He did give up, like I said, 51 to Curry and 41 to Lowry. But other than that, everybody else that I mentioned, that he held them down. So he holds down players a little bit more better than I think Rose would or Jones. So D. Lil is definitely in play, man. Portland against point guards, giving up 27.5, actually 3 more fantasy points more than Minnesota. Rose is averaging 29 and Jones 17. This is just in case there's no Jeff Teague, which I believe he won't be in play. So Derrick Rose is in play. He's averaging 29. And as you can see, Mr. Jones is averaging pretty much 17. They did go up 40 to Chris Paul, 35 to Collison, 37 to Dragic, 36 to Wall, and 34 to Rondo. 36 to Wall was the only one that was below value. The only player that they held down. And that was defended by D. Lil. So Damian Lillard, we know, is not the greatest defending point guard, but in this matchup here, you got to believe he's got the tremendous upside. 55, 60 point upside against these other young men. So I definitely like Damian Lillard. We come over here, we got Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler plays, hands down, he is in play. There's just no doubt about it, because when you look at shooting guards, Portland has given up 31.3 fantasy points per game. Jimmy Butler is averaging 43.5, nearly 44 fantasy points per game. They gave 40 to Holiday, 44 to Oladipo, 48 to Beal, and 49 to DeRozan. Jimmy Butler is right there with those guys in the same category as far as skill set. I see Jimmy Butler, if he plays, especially if he's had some rest, and knowing that if he plays today and he rests tomorrow because he's only going to play one game out of a back-to-back, I think this is the game that he should play in. The one against Portland, against a very good team, to show that, hey, you know what, Minnesota with me on the court, we are pretty darn good. So I definitely feel that Jimmy Butler will make every effort to play today and take off tomorrow, where they got, I think it's the Clippers, who are a little better defensive team. But this is a game that they can have a shootout with Portland. This game, like I said, the implied totals are pretty high. So again, love Jimmy Butler here if he plays. If he plays, then definitely I'm fading on CJ McCollum, even though he had a great game last night. I'd rather pay all the way up for Jimmy Butler because I think he's just going to ball his butt off. All right, the matchup is there. But just in case, for those guys who want to know how Minnesota has been handling the shooting guards, well, they've given up 27.6 fantasy points per game. CJ's averaging 28. They did give up 40 to Mitchell and 38 to Brandon Ingram. But those were all defended by Mr. They held down, sorry about that. They held down Oladipo to 35 and 32 to Ingram. Those were all held down by Jimmy Butler. So I mean, CJ McCollum is not gonna be that easy for him to do have a big game, let's put it that way, against Jimmy Butler defending him. So I like Jimmy Butler in this matchup over here. Wiggins, hands down, is in play for me over everybody else is here. So I ain't gonna go over his numbers. Power forward, like I said, these guys here, the matchup, Eminu and Taj Gibson. Let's take a look at the power forward position. As far as power forward, Minnesota defending power forwards, 38.1 fantasy points per game. They're giving up a whopping amount. Eminu is averaging 23.5. He had 5,100. You need 25 pretty much. And they gave up 44 to Draymond Green, 40 to Giannis, 40 to Doncic, 58 to Kevin Love, and 56, pretty much almost 57 to LaMarcus Aldridge. So a lot of fantasy points that were all defended. Those were all defended by Mr. Taj Gibson or Mr. Wiggins. Between the two, have put in the effort against those players. They did have a couple of notable games. Like Siakam put up 27, Thaddeus Young put up 22, Favors put up 22, Kuzma put up 30. Those are the games that actually shut down the power forward. So again, I find them more in the Siakam, Thaddeus Young, Favors, Kuzma type of tier as far as Eminu is concerned, and Taj Gibson. So I mean, I kind of figure Eminu should be okay here. Should be able to get 25 to 30 and meet value. I really believe so. When we go to Portland versus power forwards, they've given up 34 fantasy points per game. That's pretty high. As I said, Minnesota gives up 38. Taj Gibson is averaging 24. So there's room for Gibson here. They gave up 46 to Merrichick, 45 to Markieff Morris, 40, and they held down to the mid-tier players, PJ Tucker 26, Olenek 34, and even Aaron Gordon only had 25. So there's some times where Eminu and company and Zach Collins definitely defend well enough against power forwards. But I think both of these guys are in play. I would not be at all, like I said earlier, to put both of them in a lineup. At center, Towns, Nurkic, I'm all over Towns. When it comes to Portland versus centers, they're giving up 28.5 fantasy points per game. Towns is averaging 40. They did give up 43 and 36 to McGee in two matchups, 40 to Whiteside and 47 to Vukovic. And then we know that Nurkic is capable of getting into foul trouble. I like Towns. He's starting to get it going now. At 9,400, you need 46, 47. So a little bit above his average, but he's capable. He has a 50-point upside. He already had two 63-point games, just two games back and 3 games back. He is more than capable of getting you 60, more so of a 50, 55 spot easy. So I definitely like him here. We come over to the final game at center. At point guard. So we look at the point guards. Lowry in play, 8,900. You pretty much need 44. You need about 44 from Lowry. He's averaging 42.5. We go look up here and we see how LA has defended against point guards. And Los Angeles is giving up 30.5 fantasy points per game. Lowry's averaging 42. Van Fleet is at about 24, which I told you I have Van Fleet as someone that I'm considering. They gave up 44 to Lillard. They gave up 49 to Lillard last night, 44 the first time around, 38 to Jamal Murray, 51 to Chris Paul. So, yeah, I think Kyle Lowry should be okay here. On the flip side, Rajon Rondo, I like him here in this matchup, 5,600. If you didn't want to go Lowry, you could go down in the same matchup, take Rondo. Toronto versus point guards, 31.3 fantasy points per game. All right, just one fantasy point more than LA. So either one, you could go either way. You can actually stack up. This game is a great game stack. You could throw in there Lowry and Rajon Rondo, and you got two pretty decent point guards going against each other. They can score. But going back to point guards for Toronto, they gave up 31.3 fantasy points per game. Rondo's averaging 30, so it's right there in the wheelhouse. They give up 41 to Kimball Walker, 50 to John Wall, and 37 to Kyrie Irving. So there is a little room here for Rondo to get his 30 to 35. Plus, he had a nice solid game last night where he put up 43 against Portland. So, again, Rajon Rondo in play for me. Love the price at 5,600. And Van Fleet is definitely in play still. We go to shooting guard. Danny Green, definitely hands down here the better play. Josh Hart, he's pretty cheap right now, 4,100. We know he's got 30-point upside. He could be one that can surprise somebody. I mean, I'm not completely out of the Josh Hart sweepstakes, to be honest with you. He's put up a 38 and a 39 earlier in the year. He's still getting more than enough minutes. 24. Did have to 16 minutes here against Dallas. No problem. Bounced back last night. Played 25 minutes. Put 11 points, 1 assist, 2 blocks, and a steal. He needs to just get back to that. Stealing the ball, defending, showing that he wants to be on the court. Danny Green is going to be a tough go. Toronto versus shooting guards. 25.5 fantasy points per game. Hart is averaging 23. And if you want to consider KCP, which I'm not, he's averaging 10. All right. Booker put up 38.8, Beal put up 49, and then Danny Green shut down Hield, Brogdon, Fultz, Lamb, Jaylen Brown, and Rodney Hood, all between 18 to 24 fantasy points only apiece. So it'll be 24 is the high end, so it'll be Josh Hart. So I don't see that. I think right now, as far as the statistics, as far as fantasy points, it leads to maybe Danny Green defending more than enough against these guys to actually be a viable play here at 5,300. And the Lakers give up quite a bit of fantasy points to shooting guards, 41.3 fantasy points per game. And Mr. Green is averaging 23. They gave up 36 and 39 in two respective games against McCollum, 28 to Wesley Matthews, 38 to Okogie, 61 and 63 in two games against DeRozan, 38 to Booker, and 54 to Harden. So, yeah, I mean, he's not in the league of a Harden or a Booker, but nonetheless, Wesley Matthews, Okogie, McCollum, Danny Green should be able to get 25 to 30 as well. I think he's a viable play here. He needs 27 to meet value. He may be someone to consider. Small forward James, Kawhi Leonard, they're both in play. Love Kawhi Leonard in this matchup more because I'll save $1,900. So if Kawhi Leonard does play and he's able to go 100%, then we got to keep an eye on this. But I think Kawhi Leonard would be a viable play here. You only need 50 from him at 10,100. And with LeBron James here, you're going to need 60. So it's quite a bit more of a stretch. And he's only averaging 54 right now. But he's in play. This is going to be a shootout. If Kawhi Leonard is not in the game, then obviously it favors LeBron James. But then again, I think it's still going to be a tough decision to make because if the game gets out of hand in LA and let's say, Toronto falls really terribly behind, James might not play an entire game. So those are the things you got to be concerned with. And that if that's going to be the case, then you got to definitely consider Lance Stevenson at 4,500, who will play more minutes and get touches every time he's on the floor. He is very aggressive and he loves touching the ball, and when he has it, he pretty much doesn't cough it up a whole lot. So he has the potential to put 25, 30, 35 very quickly in a short period of time. 20, 25 minutes, he can light it up. So definitely keep Lance Stevenson in play or in your thinking process there as far as making lineups. Then we come over here, power forward, Ingram, Kuzma, Ibaka, Siakam. I like them all. I think they're all balanced out to be very competitive against one another. I definitely could see myself having a lineup or two where I have maybe some Kuz and Ibaka in the same lineup as my two power forwards, or maybe an Ingram with Siakam, or vice versa. So when we go down to the power forward spot, as far as how they've been defending power forwards, the Lakers against power forwards only 22.5 fantasy points per game, one of the lowest in the slate. So they actually have been defending these guys pretty well. Ibaka's coming in with 31 fantasy points per game and Siakam 26. They gave up 34.6 to Aminu, 31 to Doncic, and 28 to Dante Cunningham. Toronto, on the other hand, on the flip side, power forwards, 23.7 fantasy points per game. Both teams have been pretty solid in holding down power forwards from having huge games. Kuzma's coming in here averaging 29 and Ingram 25. They gave up 33 to Ilyasova, 31 to Doncic, 33 to Markieff Morris, and 27 to Gordon Hayward. Nobody over 30. Nobody over 30. So again, definitely a nice matchup. Definitely maybe here if you're going to go and be really cheap on it, I would think Siakam would make it be a nice play at $5,800. He's $700 cheaper than his counterpart Ibaka, and $1,100 cheaper than Ingram. So if you wanted to go for a power forward on a cheaper end, I would definitely go with Siakam. At center, McGee, Valanciunas, definitely going to have a little exposure to both. Definitely love Valanciunas more for $6,100. When we go here and we look to see how LA has done against centers, the worst out of the two teams tonight, let's put it this way, as far as in the slate, the Lakers have given up the most fantasy points to centers, 41 fantasy points per game, and Valanciunas is averaging 28. You got 6,100, you need 30. And they gave up 39 and 30 respectively to Nurkic, 63 to Mr. Towns, 41 to Jokic. Ayton put up 48, and Aldridge put up 61. So Valanciunas, I always like Valanciunas, and I tell you, he can put up a lot of points. He just doesn't get a whole lot of minutes, and he still doesn't get a whole ton. I knew he was going to come back and get more of a minutes in this game, and he did. He put up 38. He's capable of getting you 40 fantasy points or better in a short period of time. More than one fantasy point per minute almost every single time he plays. So at 6,100, I wouldn't mind paying for him. I think he's going to get 35, 40 in this matchup against McGee. Very, very important game, and more so if there's no Kawhi Leonard. They're definitely going to have to work the ball inside to Mr. Valanciunas. So now I go back to the cruncher. So now that I gave you guys more or less everybody here, we can basically just start pinpointing on where we're going to go, right? So I definitely like Lillard. I definitely like the matchup for Connolly. We've seen that the Rondo matchup is pretty good as well. On the lower end here, if there's no Derrick Rose and there is no Jeff Teague, then you got to at least consider for 4,800 Tyus Jones. Then on the lower end, right now, for me, DJ Augustin is gone, and so is Cannon. Now, not Cannon, because Cannon could be a budget play. So let's leave him there for a budget play. All right, let's go to shooting guard. Now, this is the player pool. We already narrowed it down a little bit. Connolly, Lowry's in play as well. Let's do that. Go to shooting guard. DeRozan, love the matchup. Butler, if he plays, love the matchup. Booker, love the matchup. Danny Green, love the matchup. Then on the bottom end here, as far as value, probably just, I would say Bellinelli. All these guys are checked off. These are the guys that I favored the most. And the guys that are checked off are all the guys that I had chosen in the player pool. All right, I'm going to show you how we're going to just optimize that in a moment. Small forward, we narrowed it down to James and Kawhi Leonard. If Kawhi Leonard doesn't go, then that will hurt. I will probably not be high on James for that. Okay, Rudy Gay is in play, considering the circumstances with Orlando. Their best defender in that spot is Mr. Isaac, and he is game time decision. Now, if he goes, Gay is not in consideration. But if Isaac is not playing, or Simmons, then I definitely favor Rudy Gay here. Okay, Andrew Wiggins in play. Lance Stevenson play as a $4,500 play. Simply if LeBron James doesn't have to play a full game. Like if Kawhi Leonard is out, we definitely got to consider Lance Stevens. So let's see what pops up in the optimizer as far as how often he gets chosen. Dante Cunningham, I think for value, definitely he should be the one to go with, even though he's going up against the second best defending team against small forwards. At power forward, still like Aldridge here over Gordon. Down here, love Ibaka and Siakam. And when it comes to the two here, I probably would just go Ingram. Aminu's in play and Gibson. And that's pretty much it. At center, Towns, Vukovic, and Gasol are my favorite plays, and Valanciunas. So I'm laying off a little bit of McGee and Ayton, but again, they could be in play. Now, I'm going to lock in. I'm going to have these 4 guys. We're going to eliminate the ones that we didn't choose, right? So that would be McGee and Ayton, at least that I didn't choose. No Zach Collins. No Kyle Kuzma. No Aaron Gordon here. A small forward. No Ariza. No CJ Miles. And this is going to spit out only these on the optimizer when we optimize it. No McCollum, no Fournier, no Garrett Temple, no Josh Hart for now, and just Bellinelli. And then a point guard. We'll leave Rose in there for now. Rondo, Van Fleet, Cannon. Okay. That's where we're pretty much at. All right, so I'm going to go here. We're going to make lineups. I'm going to put up, let's put 50. Let's see how many lineups we can get out of that in the optimizer. And this is how the Fantasy Cruncher crunches it down and gives you lineups. And today, okay, out of the guys that I chose, we got Rondo in the first main lineup. 59,900, only 100 left over. It's good to leave some money on the table. We got Rondo in here, Van Fleet, Booker, Bellinelli, Kawhi Leonard, Gay and Aldridge, Ibaka and Valanciunas. Okay, give or take. We come over here to the screen. This over here basically tells you out of the players that were chosen, how they were laid out as far as percentages. So 88% of the lineups were made with Serge Ibaka in it. Bellinelli came up as a good value player, 8,600, 86%. Booker at 82, Kawhi Leonard at 78, Dante Cunningham at 68, Fred Van Fleet at 60. It goes on and on. Now, again, we could adjust this, okay? I can go back and be like, hey, you know what? I'm not too fond. I can remove guys right here, move them out of the pool. So Van Fleet, I like Van Fleet. I don't have no problem with this here with Rondo and Van Fleet. We know we're going to get good, steady play from Van Fleet. He's probably going to get 20 to 25. Rondo, I could see him possibly getting, 30 or better. He has the potential to do that. Booker is not a bad play here. Bellinelli. Then we're looking to see which studs we have here. So we have Leonard, Aldridge, pretty much, and Booker. And this lineup here, Booker, Leonard, Aldridge again. And they did throw in here Ibaka and Gasol. Kind of like that lineup a little bit more. Over here we got Lillard, Booker, LaMarcus Aldridge 3, and Gasol. So we got 4 solid plays there. Over here, Lillard, Booker, Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge is 4. Valanciunas, I would think, is a solid play. So I would say 5 there. Van Fleet. So again, you can always alter it. I could come back up here and say, hey, you know what? I want to see. I like the matchup more for Marc Gasol. Well, I can actually lock him in. Let me lock in 5 guys. I'm going to lock in Gasol, and you can just do that. You see how I locked them in there if you use the Fantasy Cruncher? And I'm going to lock in one player over here that I definitely will want in that matchup. And I believe I'm going to go with Siakam here and a small forward. I'm going to go with something tells me that Kawhi Leonard is going to play in this game. So I'm going to go with Kawhi there as shooting guard. Definitely want Butler. And I'm okay with Rondo here or even Mr. Jones or Van Fleet, but I'm going to go with Rondo. So I locked in those guys. Those are like my stud. Those are my core 5. And let's see what comes up here now. So now we have a lineup with at least my 5 guys that I chose. Rondo, Butler, Kawhi Leonard is in here, LaMarcus Aldridge, Siakam, and Mr. Gasol. So in between, they gave me Cunningham, they gave me Bellinelli. I'm okay with those guys. One of those guys is probably going to do well enough. The other one's not going to do as well. I could see one of those numbers getting chucked out. We get a nice, good, little consistent player here in Van Fleet. It's not a bad lineup. Come over here, you got Butler. We got in between, we got Taj Gibson. Not bad. So we got a couple of nice plays here, man. So the bottom line is, guys, this is the way. So I know it's a little lengthy, the video. I just wanted to share with you on how I go about things. Now, you're going to ask me who I think are the best plays for today. Well, I'm going to say today, At point guard, if you want to go with somebody solid, I think Rajon Rondo is a great bet. If you want to have a solid point guard, I think Damian Lillard is the play of the day. Okay, so go with Lillard. And then I would say the value play with Rajon Rondo. I'm giving you that right now on the screen on the Fantasy Cruncher. On shooting guard, I love Jimmy Butler. If Jimmy Butler plays, I definitely will have the most of my lineups at shooting guard. Will have my stud shooting guard will be Jimmy Butler. And then if you're going to go in and save some money, definitely Danny Green at 5,300 will probably be the value play. And then I would say Bellinelli is the budget play. Small forward, definitely Kawhi Leonard if he plays. I think he is the best play there. And if you're going to go down any lower, Dante Cunningham will be the budget play at 3,600. And as far as value, I mean, man, as you can see, not much there. You could go with just Lance Stevenson just in case the game gets out of hand. I would say Wiggins is in play or Stevenson as your value play right there. And at a power forward today, definitely like at the top, I will probably go with Aldridge. And then Siakam will be my value play. And then my bottom tier play will probably be maybe Tolliver at 3,900. I would think it's probably the only one I would consider as value going into today. And then at center, I like Marc Gasol. I do like Valanciunas too. I think Valanciunas and Gasol, but I will have a little sprinkle of Vukovic and Towns, to be totally honest with you, because they are in favorable matchups too. Will any of them have a huge game? I don't know. I think Marc Gasol and Valanciunas probably in a better position simply also because of their lower price. I could save some of that money so that I could pay up for Leonard and pay up for Jimmy Butler, in these other matchups here. So that's where I'm at. So that's pretty much it, guys. That is pretty much it, man. So those are the guys that I'm looking at. That's more or less a way of how I go things. Of course, I also use ESPN. I look at how the field goal percentages are, who's turnover, what's the turnover ratio, so on and so forth. Then I go to NBA.com and I go in there and I look at some of the statistical data, player versus player, who is defending guys more. And obviously I look up the fantasy points and I keep my own tally every day. I pretty much put the tallies of some of the key guys that I'm looking at and I keep them on a log. And that's how I more or less have the idea of who has put up large numbers against whom. But there's software out there that you can get for that. I just can't afford to buy all the stuff, so I use all the stuff that I got available to me, and basically I'm a stat guy. I just write the stuff down as well, so a lot of time consumed. But that's pretty much it, man. So that's a 4-game slate for you guys. That gives you a little bit of an idea of how I go about things. Hopefully you like the video. Hopefully it helps out those who are new to DFS and NBA. If you want to be able to use the Fantasy Cruncher, the Fantasy Cruncher is in the description box of the video here. Is always there all the time. Fantasy Cruncher, you can be able to utilize. I think it's about almost $30 a month, but it's pretty darn good. As you can see, it gets the defense versus position. You get the Vegas odds here, the salary, the floor, the ceiling, fantasy points per game, fantasy points per minute, the usage rate, the value per dollar per player, and of course you can always look up all the information of their prior games, even going back to last season. I mean, you can get an idea of where they were as far as price range. It's just a great tool. I've been using it for a good year or so now, especially for NBA. I use it for MLB. It's fantastic for MLB and for WNBA. I don't use it for the NFL. The NFL, I basically do all the other stuff, RotoWire, RotoWorld. I use all kind of other things, including the NFL Network and so on and so forth, to be able to get all the information I need. And you can also use basketball reference here, as well as football. You can use Pro Football Reference. Very good websites to get information on statistics and so on and so forth. So again, I'm sorry for the long video, but it's more of a kind of like a little tutorial or a little bit of strategies and tips on how to go about doing certain research to get your lineups together. All right, guys. Again, drop a like, man. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. The videos will go back to regular way going into tomorrow. I think the slate is definitely above, but anytime we have a 3 or 4 game slate, I'll probably do something like this just to be able to give a little bit of information on how to go ahead and put a player pool together and how to narrow it down and make decisions on whom you may want to have favored in your player pool so that you can crunch down some lineups. All right, that'd be basically it, man. Good luck tonight. See you guys next time.